So I'm a civil engineer. I did a PhD in modelling extreme ocean waves many years ago from Imperial College. And I've since spent most of my career working in or around sort of numerical modelling and or engineering, and then also in sort of the marine environment, which then brings me into the work we do with CCell. What we do is we provide reefs that attenuate the waves to actually sort of hold, to reverse the effects of climate change. So if I run you through these slides fairly quickly, so we've had a, we've had a lot of press over the last couple of years. I mean, it's quite an exciting, interesting area that we're working in. But what we fundamentally do is we install steel cages in the ocean. And this is on the left-hand side here is an example of what we've built in Mexico, which is about 120 meters long. And these structures have an almost instant benefit for the marine environment. So you see a huge increase in the number of fish and marine life around these structures. But that's not really what we're about. Our goal is to break the waves before they reach the shore. The reason we do this is fundamentally because if you look around the world, and this is a picture taken from a hotel in Playa del Carmen in Cancun, they've seen a dramatic loss of their coastline, in a very short period of time. So the photo on the left is from a Google image taken in 2017. I first took this photo on the right in 2019, and you can see that they've lost about 30 to 50 meters of beach. And this is replicated around the world. So we estimate from the analysis we've done, there's around about 51% of all shorelines or sandy shorelines are experiencing increased erosion. So they are, reducing in size. Now, the solution, as is often the case, is nature sort of derived. So coral reefs themselves are phenomenally successful at holding back waves and preventing erosion. This wall of white water that you see on the right-hand side here is directly above the start of a reef. And as the waves come in, they steepen, they often break, and as soon as they break, they lose their energy through turbulence. And the result is that the water on the right is actually very calm and and safe. But crucially for the world, islands like the Maldives wouldn't exist if it wasn't for coral reefs. An awful lot of the Mexican eastern coast is protected by coral reefs, and overall the world estimate, we reckon there's around about 200 million people who are directly protected in this way. So this is what we're aiming to sort of replicate. So the CCell solution is really made up of 4 key elements. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, we install this steel structure. We then install onto that some electronics that we call CCell Sense, which I'll explain in a second. But that's principal goal of that system is to provide a very small current that is used to grow rock using a technology called mineral accretion. So if you do, essentially we're doing electrolysis in water, and that causes minerals that are naturally found in the sea to precipitate out and form the rock around our structure. In some ways, that's similar to what you see, say, in a kettle when you boil it. You see minerals in the water settling out at the bottom of your kettle. But CCell Sense for us is an awful lot more than just providing that power to drive the mineral accretion. We're also using it to actually collect data. And that's a big part of our business, and certainly a big part of what we're going to be doing as we go forward. So it's using, first of all, information around, temperature, what the waves are doing, but also, what we're seeing in terms of the rock growth. We're also now moving into that area of actually monitoring the marine environment and seeing, what's changing in terms of fish, pollution levels, etc. Now, the third element is, as I've alluded to, is actually to growing the rock. The reason for this is, the reason we want to grow that rock is that we want to install quite a lightweight, simple structure in the ocean, and then we want to get the bulk and the weight of that structure really from the minerals that are naturally available within the sea. And as I've said earlier, our goal here is to attenuate those waves, to cause those waves to break or to lose some energy. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic as causing the waves to break, as you see here. It can often be just removing 10, 20% of the energy from those waves. That is what we've seen in the last 10, 20 years in terms of climate change. Many areas they've seen the wave climate going up by anywhere from sort of 1 to 2%. The world average is 0.4% year on year. So what we're trying to do is just wind the clock back 10, 20 years as is appropriate for each region. Now, what's neat about what we're doing is as soon as you install those reefs, we see a huge benefit in terms of fish. Fish in themselves bring an awful lot of benefits to a region. They not only eat away algae and other sort of pollutants that might sort of collect on your structure, but they also provide nutrients for things like seagrass. Seagrass in itself is a fantastic plant that helps to clean the water and also removes CO2. And the rock that we're growing is also hugely beneficial for corals or bivalves, because they can attach onto that. They don't really want to attach onto steel or wood. What they want is a nice textured rocks finish, and that's what we provide, which it makes it very easy for them to connect onto it and grow accordingly. And and then obviously the coming out of that is what I talked about in the wave attenuation, and causing these waves to break and prevent the erosion. Now, if you then pan out yet further, you can actually start to see, if we can enhance fish, we can enhance, improve things for the fishing community. I mentioned, we can do seagrass, we can do carbon capture. With corals, we can provide dive attractions. I mean, dive attractions is a huge market. It's worth something like 9 billion before the pandemic. There's equally a huge amount of marine research going on and around corals. I mean, corals are extraordinarily beneficial to our marine life. 25% of all marine life live in coral reefs, or were born in those reefs. And if we lose them, it's going to have a dramatic impact on our food chain. And then coming up to the top side of here, we can protect coasts, we can lower people's insurance, we can help to restore beaches. And with beaches, for example, there's a very close correlation between the amount of sand a hotel has on its beach and how much they can charge for their rooms and or the occupancy of their hotel. And then moving back towards the top left-hand side of this diagram, through our CCell Sense technology, it's in many ways the future of the company is around the data that we can collect and the sense that we can make around that data. We know in some ways less about the surface the oceans of this world than we do about the surface of Mars, and we'd like to see if we can change that in quite a dramatic way. And then finally, we always try to work with the local community. They actually end up building these structures. They will install those structures. What we do is provide the intelligence, the blueprints, if you like, to how it's done. And this is really our sort of initial target market. As I mentioned, hotels are very dependent on the sand in front of them. Just by nudging the occupancy rate of a hotel by about 1 to 2%, we can pay for our system. Equally, a lot of coastal communities have spent a huge amount on this prime land, and they are just seeing it washed away. This area of Telchek, for example, they were losing about 0.5 meter a year just for erosion, and this is where we're working to stop that. And more globally, you've got erosion going on throughout the world. It's not unique to the Caribbean or east coast of the UK. It is happening at an international level. The UN estimates that we need to be spending about 120 billion a year to address climate change and the flooding that resulted to that. We think that number's a bit high, but it's certainly in the realm of about sort of 30 billion a year. As the sort of total addressable market. For us, we've narrowed that down and said, okay, let's just focus in on those sandy shores and where there's, there are people, there are buildings, and also where we think it's politically feasible to operate, and you end up with a serviceable addressable market of about 7 billion. And if you take about 15% of that, which is quite a conservative estimate of what we think we can achieve, you have a market of about 1.1 billion a year. And the competition is really broken up into sort of 3 main areas. First of all is these sort of hard solutions. This is often what you'll see when you go into, say, Dover docks or big ports. So it's a technology or an approach that really hasn't evolved much since the Romans. You take a large rock, you throw it in the ocean, and you just keep piling them up until, you stop the waves. And of course, with modern technology, we've got smart, and we can now make angular concrete units and pile them up. It's extraordinarily expensive, very effective. I mean, I'm not going to deny that, but it's a very heavyweight solution. The other option is that what you see a lot of is beach replenishment. I mean, this is really a sticking plaster. You know, you've lost some beach, just go and find some sand and throw it back on again, and just wait for it to wash away again. So it's not a solution as such, but it gets you a quick fix. And there's a lot of companies who are building quite extensive fleets, just driving up and down, as you see in this picture, moving sand from one place to another, and they'll just have to repeat that. And out of just desperation, what we now see is an awful lot of companies, I mean hotels, but with that particular, looking for cheap solutions. And this is one of the ones we see most prevalently in Mexico, which is a technology known as geotubes. And this is essentially a large sandbag. It's almost like a sausage, and you fill that with sand. Has quite a lot of ecological impacts, both in terms of its creation, but also it breaks down over time. And then you've got plastic washing around all over the place. I mean, these last about sort of 3 to 5 years because they break down in the sun. The way we see ourselves in terms of growing as a business, I mean, as with any business, we're here to scale. We want to have a measurable impact on the climate and on coasts around the world. So we can't be everywhere. We can't do all of that ourselves. So CCell's business is really on this right-hand side of this picture. It's around the modeling, it's around the design of the systems and structures that we put out. So it's using data and using information that we collect from the natural environment, making sense of that, and building appropriate solutions for the environment. And then we hand all of that over to our partners. So for example, we have several partnerships out in Mexico. We've recently signed an agreement with Terra through one of their subsidiaries, which is Reinforced Earth in India, and they get involved in the actual the groundwork. So they do the surveys, they apply for the permits, they will install the structures, and they provide the maintenance all the time, with our sort of blessing and our support on the right hand side. And then, as I said at the beginning, we see, as we evolve as a company, an awful lot of what we are going to be doing is around that data capture and using that to really try to understand our oceans, understand what's going on in terms of our fish populations, why do fish populations reducing in one area, increasing perhaps somewhere else, what external factors have happened. Can we provide early warnings to people? That's just one example. There's thousands of areas where we feel, the data that we can collect, we can actually utilize in a really positive way. And to make all of that happening, we have a fantastic team. Still a relatively small team, so we're looking to raise quite a significant amount of money as we move into this next quarter, in the beginning of next year, to sort of grow out the team and bring in some additional capabilities to sort of strengthen out our sort of commercial capabilities and offerings. But as it stands, we have our main office in London. I have a small team in Madrid, and a small team over in Mexico. And as I mentioned, we've got some really good partnerships with both Access EMA in Mexico and Terra. And that's it.